I thought I knew what humiliation felt like. I was wrong. Picture this, your dream wedding, 200 guests, everything perfect down to the last white rose, and then some drunk woman stumbles onto your dance floor, grabs the microphone, and delivers a speech that destroys your entire world in under 3 minutes. A speech that 10 million people have now watched. A speech that made my wedding the most viral disaster of the year. But here's the thing nobody talks about in those comment sections. The real nightmare didn't start when she grabbed that mic. It started 3 days later when I found out who she really was. My name is Jess, and this is the story of how my perfect wedding became my worst nightmare, and how sometimes the person you trust most is the one holding the biggest secret. Let me take you back to that Saturday in June. You know those mornings when everything feels like it's falling into place? The sun was hitting the vineyard just right, my dress fit like it was made by angels, and my bridesmaids were actually getting along. Tom looked incredible in his navy suit, that crooked smile I fell in love with lighting up his whole face when he saw me walking down the aisle. We'd been planning this wedding for 18 months. Every detail mattered to me. The fairy lights wrapped around the oak trees, the way the tables curved like crescents around the dance floor, even the specific shade of blush pink for the napkins. Tom used to tease me about my color-coded planning binders, but he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Whatever makes you happy, babe." The ceremony was flawless. I actually managed not to cry during my vows, which was a miracle considering I'd practiced them 50 times in the mirror. Tom's voice cracked when he promised to love me through every season, every storm, every sunrise we'd share together. His hands were shaking when he slipped the ring on my finger. For 6 perfect hours, I was living in a fairy tale. The reception was everything I'd dreamed of. Dinner went off without a hitch, my dad's speech made everyone cry in the best way, and even Tom's college buddies behaved themselves. We'd just finished our first dance to At Last by Etta James when the DJ announced it was time for open dancing. That's when she appeared. I noticed her first as just a flash of red in my peripheral vision. Red dress, red lipstick, red wine sloshing in her glass as she stumbled between tables. She didn't belong. I knew every single person we'd invited, had personally addressed every invitation, and this woman, she was a stranger. She was maybe 5'6", early 30s, with long black hair that looked like she'd run her fingers through it one too many times. Pretty, but in that sharp, dangerous way that makes other women uncomfortable. The kind of pretty that comes with a warning label. I was about to ask Tom if he recognized her when she made her move. She walked straight to the DJ booth, and before anyone could stop her, she'd grabbed the microphone. The music cut out. 200 people turned to stare. Testing, testing. Her voice echoed across the vineyard, slurred but clear enough. Oh good, this thing works. My heart started pounding. Tom was frozen beside me, his face gone completely white. Hi everyone. She swayed slightly, gripping the mic stand for balance. I know, you're all wondering who the heck I am, right? Well, let me introduce myself. I'm Sarah, and I have something really important to share about the happy couple. The wedding planner was pushing through the crowd, frantically signaling to security, but Sarah was already in full swing. See, I used to know Tommy here really, really well. She pointed directly at my husband, and I felt my stomach drop. We were, what would you call it, Tom? High school sweethearts? College lovers? Or should I go with my personal favorite, the love of each other's lives? The silence was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Now, I know what you're thinking, Sarah continued, her voice getting stronger, more confident. Ancient history, right? Who cares about some old girlfriend crashing the party? But here's the thing. She paused, swaying dangerously close to the mic. Tommy and I didn't just date in high school. We didn't just have some cute college romance. We were together until 6 months ago. The world tilted. I grabbed Tom's arm, but he was staring at Sarah like she was a ghost. 6 months ago. She enunciated each word. Right around the time you sent out those pretty little save-the-dates, actually. Funny timing, don't you think? Someone in the crowd gasped. My mom's face was horrified. Tom's best man was moving toward the DJ booth, but Sarah wasn't done. Oh, and the best part? The absolute cherry on top of this whole situation? She laughed, a bitter sound that cut through the night air. Tom proposed to me first. 3 years ago. I still have the ring. That's when Tom finally found his voice. Sarah, stop. Please. Stop? She turned that sharp smile on him. But Tommy, I'm just getting to the good part. Should I tell them about the apartment we shared? The future we planned? Or maybe. Her voice dropped to a whisper that the microphone somehow amplified. Maybe I should tell them about last month. Last month. The words hit me like a physical blow. The night you called me crying, saying you'd made a mistake, that you couldn't go through with it, that you still. That's when security finally reached her. 2 men in black suits gently but firmly took the microphone away while Tom's cousin Jake guided Sarah toward the exit. But the damage was done. 200 people had heard every word. And somebody had been filming. I stood there in my perfect dress, surrounded by my perfect decorations, while my perfect wedding crumbled around me. Tom was reaching for me, saying my name, but his voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Jess, baby, let me explain. I pulled away from him. I couldn't breathe. The fairy lights suddenly felt like spotlights, every face in that crowded judgment, every whisper a blade. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I ran past the gift table, past the dessert station I'd spent 3 weeks planning, past my grandmother's antique cake server and my mother-in-law's borrowed pearls. I ran until I reached the bridal suite in the vineyard's main house, slammed the door, and finally let myself fall apart. My phone was buzzing constantly. Texts, calls, notifications. But I couldn't look. I couldn't face whatever was happening out there in the real world. Tom found me an hour later, still in my wedding dress, makeup streaked down my face, sitting on the floor of that fancy bathroom. Jess. His voice was broken. Please. Let me explain. Explain what? I finally looked at him. Explain that you were with someone else 6 months ago? Explain that you called her last month? Explain that our entire relationship is built on lies? He sank down beside me, still in his wedding suit, his perfect hair now messy from running his hands through it. It's not what you think. Then what is it, Tom? Because right now, I'm thinking my husband has been lying to me for months, maybe years. He was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Sarah and I, we did date. For a long time. Almost 8 years, on and off since high school. 8 years. I felt sick. She wasn't lying about the proposal. I did propose to her, 3 years ago. But she said no. She said she wasn't ready, that she needed time to figure things out. And then you met me. No. He turned to face me. I met you 2 years ago, remember? At Jake's birthday party. Sarah and I had been broken up for 6 months by then. I tried to piece together the timeline, but my brain felt fuzzy, overwhelmed. But she said you were together 6 months ago. Tom's jaw tightened. We weren't together. We had coffee. A few times. She kept calling, saying she'd made a mistake, that she was ready now. But I told her it was too late. I told her about you. And last month? He closed his eyes. She showed up at my office. Completely out of nowhere. She was crying, begging me to call off the wedding. She said she'd been thinking about us, that she realized she loved me, that she'd do anything to get me back. So you called her? Crying. No. His eyes snapped open. Jess, no. I never called her. She called me. Over and over. She left voicemails, sent texts. I blocked her number, but she kept finding ways to contact me. I stared at him. You're saying she made it all up? I'm saying she twisted the truth. Yes, I was upset. Yes, I was questioning things. But not because I wanted her back. Because I was terrified of hurting you the way she hurt me. The bathroom fell quiet except for the distant sound of our guests probably talking about us, maybe leaving, maybe staying to watch the drama unfold. Why didn't you tell me about her? Tom ran his hands through his hair again. Because I was ashamed. Because every relationship I'd tried to have before you failed because I was still hung up on Sarah. Because when I met you, you were this bright, incredible person who deserved better than someone carrying around 8 years of baggage. So you decided to lie instead. I decided to leave the past in the past. I thought if I didn't talk about her, she'd stay gone. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. How'd that work out for you? We sat in silence for another few minutes. Outside, I could hear cars starting, people leaving. My perfect wedding was officially over. Jess. Tom's voice was careful, tentative. What do we do now? That was the question, wasn't it? 3 hours ago, I'd been the happiest woman alive. Now I was sitting on a bathroom floor in a wedding dress that cost more than my car, married to a man I wasn't sure I knew anymore. I don't know, I admitted. I honestly don't know. The next 3 days were a blur of avoiding phone calls and staying off social media. Because Sarah was right about one thing, somebody had filmed everything. The whole speech was on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. #WeddingCrash was trending. 10 million views and counting. The comments were brutal. Half the people thought it was staged, some elaborate publicity stunt. The other half were placing bets on whether Tom and I would make it to our first anniversary. There were memes. Reaction videos. Someone had even auto-tuned Sarah's speech and turned it into a song. My wedding day had become entertainment for strangers. Tom tried to talk to me, but I couldn't. Every time I looked at him, I heard Sarah's voice saying last month and wondered what else he hadn't told me. I stayed at my sister's apartment, wearing sweatpants and eating ice cream for breakfast, while my brand new husband called and texted and left flowers on the doorstep. On Wednesday, my sister Emily finally staged an intervention. Okay, enough, she said, physically removing the ice cream from my hands. You need to make a decision. Are you going to work this out with Tom, or are you going to file for divorce? But you can't stay in my guest room forever, eating your feelings and refreshing your view count. It's up to 12 million now, I said miserably. Jess. Emily sat down beside me on the couch. I've known Tom for 2 years. I've watched him with you. That man is head over heels, crazy in love with you. I don't know what happened with this Sarah person, but I know what I've seen. He looks at you like you hung the moon. But he lied to me. Did he? Or did he just not tell you about his ex-girlfriend? Because there's a difference. I wanted to argue, but the truth was, I hadn't told Tom about every guy I'd dated either. I hadn't mentioned Marcus, my college boyfriend who'd cheated on me and left me with trust issues. I hadn't talked about David, who'd proposed and then decided he wasn't ready for marriage after all. It's different, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Is it? Or are you scared? Emily had always been good at cutting through my nonsense. Of course I'm scared. Did you see that woman? She's gorgeous. And she knew him for 8 years. 8 years, damn. I've known him for 2. And in those 2 years, did he give you any reason not to trust him? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Tom, who brought me coffee every morning exactly how I liked it. Tom, who learned to make my grandmother's lasagna recipe just because I mentioned missing it. Tom, who held me when I cried about my job, who celebrated every small victory like it was a major accomplishment, who made me laugh even on my worst days. No, I admitted. Then maybe you should talk to him. That evening, Tom showed up at Emily's apartment. He looked terrible, exhausted and hollow-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd had on the day before. "Jess," he said when I opened the door. "Please. Just give me 10 minutes. If you still want me to leave after that, I will. But please, let me try to fix this." I let him in. We sat on Emily's couch, the same couch where I'd been wallowing for 3 days, and Tom told me everything. He told me about meeting Sarah in high school, how they'd been each other's first everything. How they'd tried to make long-distance work in college, breaking up and getting back together so many times he'd lost count. How he'd proposed because he thought that's what you did when you'd been with someone that long, not because he was sure it was right. He told me about the relief he'd felt when she'd said no, and the guilt that had followed. How he'd spent a year trying to convince himself he was heartbroken when really, he was free. He told me about the night we met, at his cousin's birthday party, how I'd been arguing with some guy about whether pineapple belonged on pizza and how my passion about something so silly had made him laugh for the first time in months. "I knew that night," he said, looking directly at me. "I knew you were different. You were so alive, so sure of yourself. You didn't need me to complete you, you just wanted me around. Do you know how rare that is?" I felt tears starting again, but for different reasons this time. "When Sarah started calling, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to drag you into that mess. She was my mistake to handle. But I should have told you. I see that now. What about last month? She seemed pretty specific about you calling her, crying." Tom's face darkened. "She called me 18 times that day." 18. I finally answered because I thought maybe someone was dead or something. "She was crying, saying she'd made a huge mistake, begging me to meet her somewhere to talk. I told her no. I told her I was getting married in 3 weeks and I was happy. But she kept pushing, kept saying I was making a mistake, that I was settling. And that upset you." Of course it upset me. Not because I believed her, but because part of me wondered if she was right about one thing. My heart clenched. "What thing?" "Whether you deserved better than someone with my history. Someone who'd wasted 8 years with the wrong person. Someone who didn't figure out what love really was until he was 32 years old." I stared at him. "Tom. I never called her crying, Jess. But I did call my dad that night. I told him I was scared I wasn't good enough for you. That you were so perfect, so sure of what you wanted, and I was just this guy who'd been stumbling through relationships for a decade." The picture was starting to come together. Sarah, desperate and manipulative, taking fragments of truth and twisting them into weapons. Why didn't you have her arrested for trespassing? Or get a restraining order? Tom laughed bitterly. Because I felt guilty. Because part of me thought I deserved it for hurting her, even though breaking up with someone isn't a crime. Because I hoped if I ignored her long enough, she'd go away. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across Emily's living room. "The thing is," I said finally, "I understand why you didn't tell me. I probably would have done the same thing. But Tom, she knew details. She knew about your office, about the timing of our save-the-dates. That's not just some random ex causing trouble." His face went pale. "What do you mean?" "I mean she's been watching us. Following us. She knew exactly when and where to hit for maximum damage." The realization hit both of us at the same time. This wasn't just about Sarah wanting Tom back. This was about Sarah wanting to destroy what we had. "We need to call the police," Tom said. "No." I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. "We need to call Sarah." Tom looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Jess, no. Absolutely not. Think about it. She got what she wanted. Our wedding is ruined, we're separated, it's all over the internet. If she really just wanted you back, wouldn't she have reached out by now? But she hasn't, has she? Tom shook his head slowly. Because this was never about getting you back. This was about revenge. And I want to know why. It took me 2 days to track down Sarah's number. Turns out when you become viral wedding disaster material, people are very eager to help you find the woman who caused it. A friend of a friend who'd gone to college with her gave me her contact information. I called her on Friday evening, exactly 1 week after my wedding. Hello? Her voice was different on the phone, smaller somehow. Hi Sarah. This is Jess. I think we need to talk. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. I didn't expect you to call. I'm sure you didn't. But here we are. So let's talk. What do you want to know? I want to know why you hate Tom so much that you'd destroy his happiness to hurt him. Another long pause. I don't hate Tom. Could have fooled me. I love him. Her voice cracked. I've loved him since I was 17 years old. Funny way of showing it. You don't understand. The words came out in a rush. You've had him for 2 years. 2 perfect years where he looked at you the way he never looked at me. Do you know what it's like to spend 8 years with someone who's holding back, who never quite commits, who always has one foot out the door? I felt a pang of sympathy despite myself. Tom wasn't holding back because he didn't love you, Sarah. He was holding back because you weren't right for each other. But you are? The bitterness was back in her voice. Little Miss Perfect with your color-coded wedding binders and your fairy tale expectations? How do you know about my wedding binders? Silence. Sarah. How do you know about my wedding binders? I might have looked at your social media. My Instagram is private. Another pause, longer this time. I followed you from a fake account. I wanted to see what was so special about you. For how long? Since Tom and I broke up for the last time. About 2 years ago. 2 years. She'd been watching me, stalking my social media, learning about my life for 2 entire years. You've been planning this for 2 years. Not planning. Just watching. Waiting. For what? For him to realize he'd made a mistake. For him to come back. But he never did. And then you posted those engagement photos and I knew. I knew he was really gone. I could hear her crying now, soft sniffles through the phone. Sarah, what you did was wrong. You didn't just hurt Tom and me. You ruined our wedding day. You humiliated us in front of our families. You turned one of the most important days of our lives into a joke for strangers on the internet. I know. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know, and I'm sorry. I was drunk and angry and I snapped. But you're not sorry enough to try to fix it. How could I possibly fix it? You could tell the truth. Make a video, post it online. Tell people you lied, that you exaggerated, that Tom never called you crying about me. But then everyone would know I'm pathetic. That I made up stories to try to win back a man who doesn't want me. Sarah. I took a deep breath. I'm going to say something, and I want you to really hear me. You're not pathetic. You're hurt. There's a difference. But what you did to us, that crosses a line from hurt into cruel. She was quiet for a long time. I loved him first, she said finally. Doesn't that count for something? Love isn't about who was first, Sarah. It's about who's right. And if Tom was right for you, you never would have needed to chase him for 8 years. The truth of those words settled between us. I'll think about it, she said eventually. The video. I'll think about it. She hung up without saying goodbye. Tom was waiting for me when I got back to Emily's apartment. How did it go? I told him everything. About the fake social media account, the 2 years of stalking, Sarah's admission that she'd made up the part about him calling her crying. Jesus, he said when I finished. She's been watching you this whole time? She's been watching us. Learning about our relationship, our plans, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Tom was pacing now, running his hands through his hair in that way he did when he was stressed. We have to do something. Get a restraining order, call the police. Maybe. But I think there might be another way. I told him about my conversation with Sarah, about the possibility of her making a public statement. You think she'll actually do it? I don't know. But Tom. I've been thinking about something else too. He stopped pacing and looked at me. What if we made our own video? What if we told our side of the story? Jess, no. The last thing we need is more attention. But what if it's the right kind of attention? What if instead of letting other people control the narrative, we take control of it ourselves? I'd been thinking about this for days. All those comments online, all those strangers making judgments about our relationship based on 3 minutes of drama. What if we could change that? We could be honest about what happened. About how relationships are messy and complicated, but that doesn't mean they're not worth fighting for. We could show people that sometimes the biggest challenges make you stronger. Tom sat down beside me. You want to put our private business online? After everything that's happened? I want to take our power back. Sarah turned our wedding into a spectacle. What if we turn our marriage into something beautiful? He was quiet for a long time, considering. What would we even say? The truth. That you had an ex who couldn't let go. That I was hurt and scared when I found out. That we're working through it because what we have is worth working for. And if people don't believe us? If they think we're just trying to save face? Then they don't know us. And their opinions don't matter anyway. Tom reached for my hand, the first time he'd touched me since our wedding night. Are you sure about this? I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd spent 2 years making me laugh, who'd learned to cook my favorite foods, who'd cried when I'd walked down the aisle toward him. This man who'd made a mistake by not telling me about his past, but who'd never actually betrayed me. I'm sure about us, I said. And if we're going to be together, we might as well be together loudly. We spent the weekend writing and rewriting our script. We kept it simple, honest, real. No dramatic music, no fancy editing. Just 2 people sitting on a couch, talking about love and forgiveness and the messiness of real relationships. Tom talked about his relationship with Sarah, about how sometimes you can love someone who's wrong for you, and how that doesn't diminish the love but it also doesn't mean you should stay. I talked about being hurt, about feeling betrayed, but also about realizing that trust isn't about never having doubt, it's about choosing to believe in someone despite the doubt. We posted it on Monday morning. By Tuesday, it had 3 million views. The comments were different this time. Still mixed, but different. People shared their own stories about difficult exes, about learning to trust again, about fighting for relationships that mattered. A few people called us fake, but most seemed to understand that real love isn't perfect, it's just persistent. Sarah never made her video. But she did send me a text message 3 days after we posted ours. I watched your video. You're right about him. Take care of each other. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. An acknowledgement, maybe. Or just goodbye. Tom and I had a real wedding 6 months later. Just family this time, in my parents' backyard, with string lights and my mom's famous potato salad. No viral moments, no uninvited guests. Just us, choosing each other again, with full knowledge of what that choice meant. People ask me sometimes if I regret the first wedding, if I wish none of it had happened. The truth is, I don't know. That day was horrible, humiliating, painful. But it also forced us to have conversations we might never have had otherwise. It made us fight for each other in a way that comfortable couples sometimes don't have to. Our marriage isn't perfect. Tom still has moments where he holds back, where I can see him wondering if he deserves happiness. I still have moments where I wonder what else he hasn't told me, where Sarah's words echo in my head. But we talk about those moments now. We don't let them fester in silence. The video of Sarah's speech still gets views sometimes. People still comment, still make jokes, still turn our worst day into entertainment. But that's not our story anymore. Our story is what happened after. Our story is two people who decided that love is worth the messiness, worth the work, worth the risk of being hurt. Our story is choosing each other over and over again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. If you've made it this far, maybe you have your own Sarah story. Maybe you've been the Sarah in someone else's story. Maybe you've stood in a bathroom in a wedding dress, wondering if the person you just married is who you thought they were. The comments are open if you want to share. And if this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Sometimes the best stories are the ones that don't go according to plan. Subscribe for more real stories about love, loss, and everything in between.